Hey everyone, Jonathan here with Short Term Dojo. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down a case study of the co-host path to running a short-term rental. I think what you're going to take away from this video is that this is one of the most attractive options because of its minimal risk and its minimal capital requirements upfront to get started. It's a really good option if you want to grow. You'll make the least amount of cash flow out of this particular path. However, the growth plan more than makes up for that should you want to grow your business. I'll go through your standard expenses as well as a standardized revenue projection. I look at the pros and cons of this particular path, not a holistic list of all of them, but some of the ones I think are right to focus for you. Hopefully this video will help educate you on that path. I like this one for those that don't necessarily have the capital to own their own assets. It's a wonderful way to get into this market. And if you have any questions, hope this video answers them for you. Thank you for watching and have a great day. In today's video, we're going to be going through the second case study analysis video, diving into the co-hosting model to run short-term rentals, okay? And now this one is probably one of the most popular methods just because the lack of money that you need to get involved with, coupled with the ability to scale this particular avenue and add to your short-term rental portfolio and start making a good bit of money real quickly. This one is actually very easy to understand. It's going to look a little bit different than the ownership model video that I put together, as well as the master lease or rental arbitrage video. Okay, so let's walk through this. You'll see the sections are the same as both other videos, but this one actually starts very simplistically. It looks really attractive here, okay? So when we're talking about the operating expenses, let me take a step back for a second. Just to recap what this model is, the co-hosting model is where you actually are acting as a property manager and you're forming relationships with landlords or owners that actually own the asset that you're going to manage on their behalf. And again, real quick, you can do this two ways, but really one is much more prevalent than another. One way is you can actually co-host with them where you share responsibilities. It's a smaller percentage of a cut where you partner with each other and you take on different responsibilities. I don't really like that just because, and a lot of people don't, because you don't have full control. Their way of doing business usually gets in the way of how you want to do business. It's just easier to run it as a true property manager, and you take a percentage and you run the show with a hands-off approach from the owner. Okay, that's the recap. This is co-hosting. You don't invest in anything. You don't own anything. You don't acquire the actual asset. This is more relationship-based, where you're treating this as a property manager. Okay, so again, this is going to look a little bit different than the other two videos, but I wanted to go through this briefly. We're going to talk about operating expenses. Here is, well, one of the single greatest benefits of this method is that you're not going to be responsible for almost any of the expenses. Okay, this is a very simple scenario here, so it could get a little bit more complicated, and yes, there could be additional expenses that are on you, but that's actually usually a good thing. It means your company's growing and you're responsible for more things that are applicable to a property manager. But let's just say, again, this is for one unit. You have a relationship with somebody, you get them to sign on board, and now you're managing and property managing their Airbnb. You're not responsible for the actual mortgage payment. There's no lease involved, so there's no payment there that you're responsible for. You're not responsible for the utilities. That's going to be in their name. They're responsible for that. The supplies, insurance, everything should be tied to the owner. You should not be getting involved with any of the expenses of owning and operating the actual property. Okay, so again, huge benefit, one of the most popular ones. You don't have to get entrenched in all that. I did keep the tech stack bill here because think of it this way, right? You don't, again, that I mentioned in some of the other videos is that's optional up front. But as you grow, or even if you want to simplify your one unit, you're going to want to invest in some property management software or something to help with some of the responsibilities, whether it be communication or the calendar or syncing that. And so I want to keep this here just to be realistic. Again, the $50 could go down a little bit, could go up as you're growing. It just depends. But for simplicity's sake, we're going to keep $50. So as is, we're going to use for all videos, we're going to use the standard $4,500 in revenue just to go over the financial scenario of this particular model. Okay, so let's assume we're making $4,500. The amount that we're going to charge in this case is a 25% management fee. Now I've seen as low as 10%. I think you can see companies like Evolve, and they're very hands off. They just do marketing and communication. They go as low as 10%. They have a lot of scale. But let's say your average singular property manager is going to charge probably between 20 and 40%. So we're going to use 25%. It's probably one of the most common numbers here. And at a $4,500 rate, you're talking $1,125 overall. And we're going to knock down that $50. Again, simple scenario. There could be extra costs for a couple of different things as your scenario gets a little bit more complicated. But you're netting $1,075 from this scenario, and you don't own anything. It's fantastic. Okay, you're just spending time building relationships, acquiring clients, as opposed to assets. Okay, so it's $1,075, really pretty good for an asset that you don't even own. Let's talk about the initial investment here, just so you understand. Again, very simple scenario here, but not a lot of upfront costs. Some of this stuff, the one that may be a reach for you, but I highly suggest it, is legal costs. And you may be asking, well, what do you mean by that? So the legal cost here is, I highly suggest spending a decent amount of money. Again, here it could range, but I put about $1,000 to meet with an attorney who can draft up very strong legal language of a property management contract specific to short-term rentals, to be able to have an official arrangement as opposed to just a handshake deal with the client that you've signed up to manage their asset. Okay, so let's say about $1,000 here. I think it's very prudent and professional to do that, to spend that money up front. You're going to have time, which I didn't put a sign of value there because that'll naturally change with what your time is worth. But again, just put in some elbow grease and some time and some hustle to get these relationships to find the right property for you to manage. Marketing, I put this here, I just threw a $500 budget there because you could maybe potentially do a little bit of Google or Facebook ads. Maybe you want to print up some flyers, some software, you want to print out some cards, you want to go to your local real estate agents, maybe buy them some coffee, discuss what your model is, what your services are, form some relationships. So a $500 budget just to get started. You may not even need that, but again, I want to be a little bit realistic here with putting yourself out there and spending a little bit of money to do so. I think that's always advantageous for you. And then photos, professional photos, you're going to be on the hook for that. You should drive that. I wouldn't let the owner dictate anything around marketing your property. This is your business. It becomes your asset by way of your management. And so I really think you should spend the money on high quality photos. I'm going to stress that again and again in all my videos. Do not take your own personal photos unless you're an absolute beast of a photographer and you know exactly what you're doing. And I wouldn't let the owner or the landlord market or self photograph the unit as well. And I wouldn't let them, even if they have pretty good photos from when they purchased it or when they tried to sell it, or maybe when they acquired it without furniture or things of that nature, just make sure you spend the money on photos here. So $250, right? All in $1,750 on a reasonable scenario. Let's move on to the pros and cons. I actually really like this model. I don't do this. I don't manage other people's properties currently. And that's just because we are expanding our portfolio through ownership for many different investment reasons. But this one, I'm beaming around the return on investment because it's really just your time and a little bit of money. It's a really fantastic way to get money coming in for very little money going out. So your return on investment here is absolutely fantastic. Let's talk about zero risk here. Nothing is absolutely zero, but in this case, it's pretty damn close. So you're not acquiring the property. You're not going to pay the utilities, the expenses. You're not going to insure it. I want to be clear on this one. You absolutely want to be on the owner's insurance, named as a insured party, your management company, or just you, just to have yourself covered when Airbnb guests or short-term rental guests go through the property. You want to be covered in some facets. So just make sure that you are named party on the insurance policy, and also clarify if it is a short-term rental specific insurance policy. That's going to be very helpful as well. However, you should not be responsible for paying the bill, which is always great. Scaling. This is by far and away the easiest and best way to scale. Your time and your ability to hustle and pick up clients and be prepared to take on those clients. And then more importantly, not just get them, but be able to onboard them efficiently and properly to make sure that it fits with your experience expectations and your branding expectations. This is an absolute wonderful way to go. It's the best way to scale per time and money invested. We're going to talk here about expense coverage. I mentioned this in the arbitrage model. The landlord or owner in this case would be responsible for all repairs. There may be a scenario where to sweeten the attractiveness of signing on with you, maybe you can get creative with a couple of small ticket items that you want to cover on their behalf, that like light bulbs, things like that, that your cover, just to not come across as nitpicky. But again, almost all expense coverage, and even really all expense coverage, you absolutely can bake into the model. It just depends on that relationship, that conversation and negotiation. But expense coverage, again, you're not on the hook for any of those expenses. Business taxes, this one again, as you form a business comes with certain taxes that you can now bake into your tax strategy. And this one's going to have those same ones. So again, this is not tax advice, but I want you to reach out to a tax strategist or a very strong CPA who understands short-term rental markets or that industry. And another great benefit of this model. And I will round this out with just a couple cons here. The control, as I mentioned, I'm kind of a control freak in everything that happens. I want to not have to go essentially through anybody telling me what I can or can't do, other than essentially the local government and whether or not that's illegal. So no HOAs, no owners, no landlords, no partners, none of that. But in this case, again, there's a little bit of a control item that you're going to have to give up, because you're going to have to run improvements, you're going to have to run upgrades, changes to the house. It's their property, it's their asset. You're going to have to make sure you run that through the ownership. You don't own the property, which comes with benefits. I'm going to couple this with equity, right? You don't own the asset. Anytime you own any asset, you have the ability to generate wealth, appreciation in that. There's equity there. So there's a lot of benefits in that you don't have in this model. Given the fact that there's literally the best return on investment in this model, I think a lot of people are totally okay with that, because maybe they wouldn't be able to move forward with this model or with Airbnbs without any money. So they're willing to forego that. So it definitely cancels that out with the return on investment, in my opinion. And then the tax benefits of actually owning the asset are not there as well, right? So business taxes, as I mentioned, those are there. It's a little bit different than tax benefits of owning the asset and processing that properly. Okay, so hopefully this helped you out understand the co-host model. Clearly the most popular model. It's not the one that I use, but it's a fantastic way to grow, start a business, start making some money, really put your relationship skills to test into the market to start growing and making some good cash flow. It's not going to be as strong as the two other models in terms of how much you're clearing per property. But man, for what you don't have to put into it from a financial standpoint, it's the best way to go. So if you have any questions at all, please drop them down below. We'll do our best to answer. Again, as I mentioned, if I don't have the answer, I'll go to my community, find out for you, and do my best to answer whatever it is that you're looking for. Thanks, and have a great day.